October 31st, 1935, Whitechapel, London. Dr. Edmund Hargrove pushed open the door to 47 Henrietta Street and immediately staggered backward. The smell hit him first, not decay but something else, something alive and wrong. In the center of the cramped parlor, a gray tabby cat sat perfectly still on a wooden chair, staring at him with unsettling intensity. On the floor beneath it lay Margaret Ashworth, 32 years old. Her eyes wide open, her body cold. But that wasn't what made the doctor's hands shake as he reached for his medical bag. The woman's lips were moving, forming words without sound. And the cat was breathing in perfect synchronization with those silent words. The constable who'd called him whispered, "It's been doing that for 3 hours, doctor. Won't stop, won't blink." What Dr. Hargrove would document in his official report that night would be dismissed by the Royal College of Physicians as nervous exhaustion and professional hysteria. The Scotland Yard file would be sealed for 50 years, and the truth about what happened in that Whitechapel flat would be far more terrifying than anyone dared to imagine. Before we uncover the truth about Margaret Ashworth and the creature that destroyed her, make sure to subscribe to Fear Sermon and ring that notification bell. We're exploring the darkest corners of history that others won't touch. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. We love hearing from our community of mystery seekers. Now let's descend into one of England's most disturbing medical mysteries. The autumn of 1935 found London still clawing its way out of the Great Depression's stranglehold. Whitechapel, once infamous for Jack the Ripper's reign of terror 47 years prior, had transformed into a labyrinth of boarding houses and cramped flats where the working poor survived on rationed hope and thin wages. The streets smelled of coal smoke and boiled cabbage. Women queued for hours at public assistance offices. Men gathered on corners, their faces hollow, swapping rumors of war brewing across the Channel in Germany. It was a time when people kept their heads down, their doors locked, and their troubles to themselves. Number 47 Henrietta Street stood in a row of identical brick buildings, their facades blackened by decades of industrial soot. Margaret Ashworth had occupied the third-floor flat since the spring of 1933, after the textile factory where she'd worked for 8 years had closed its doors forever. Her neighbors knew her as a quiet woman, meticulous about her appearance despite her circumstances, always wearing gloves even indoors, a remnant of her better days. She lived alone except for Solomon, a gray tabby she'd found as a kitten behind the butcher's shop 2 years earlier. The cat had peculiar markings, a perfect white circle on its chest that some said looked like a full moon, and eyes that caught the light wrong, reflecting gold when they should have shone green. Mrs. Edith Coopersmith, who lived in the flat below, would later tell investigators that Margaret had changed over the summer of 1935. She stopped going out during the day, Edith recalled in her formal statement. I'd hear her pacing at night, talking to that cat like it was a person. And the cat, you could hear it moving around up there at all hours, heavy footsteps almost. Though that's impossible, isn't it? The local vicar, Reverend Thomas Blackwood, had visited Margaret in late September after she'd missed 3 consecutive Sunday services. He documented the encounter in his personal diary, which would later become crucial evidence. Miss Ashworth appeared disheveled, her hands trembling. She insisted I examine the cat, claimed it was watching her sleep, that she could feel it thinking at her. When I suggested she might benefit from rest, she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength and whispered, "It's learning me, Reverend, learning how to be me." Her pupils were dilated, though she showed no signs of intoxication. I left deeply unsettled. Something was happening in that third-floor flat, something that defied the comfortable explanations of medicine and science, and by October, even the landlord, Mr. Bernard Fletcher, had noticed. The rent was always on time, left in an envelope under the door, he told police. But when I knocked to check the plumbing, she wouldn't let me in. Spoke through the door in this flat voice, not like herself at all. And I could swear I heard 2 voices in there, hers, and something else mimicking her, like an echo but wrong. Escalating incidents. September 3rd, 1935. The first documented incident occurred at 2:30 in the morning. Mrs. Coopersmith woke to screaming. Raw, terrified screaming that lasted exactly 45 seconds before stopping abruptly. She rushed to Margaret's door with 3 other tenants, pounding, calling out. After a long silence, Margaret opened the door wearing her nightdress, her face completely calm. "A nightmare," she said simply. "I apologize for disturbing everyone." but Mrs. Coopersmith saw past her into the flat. Solomon sat on the kitchen table, illuminated by a single candle, and it was staring at Margaret's back with what Edith would describe as human concentration. More disturbing, Margaret's shadow on the wall behind her moved a fraction of a second after she did, as if struggling to keep pace. When Edith mentioned this to Margaret, the woman's expression never changed. "Cats see things we don't, Mrs. Coopersmith. Everyone knows that." Then she closed the door, and the lock clicked with awful finality. September 17th, 1935, Dr. Hargrove made his first house call to 47 Henrietta Street, after Margaret had collapsed at the grocer's shop on Whitechapel Road. The shopkeeper, Mr. Yusuf Mansour, reported that she'd been standing at the counter when she suddenly went rigid, her eyes rolling back. But the strangest thing, he told the doctor, was that she didn't fall like a person faints. She dropped straight down all at once like a puppet with cut strings. When Dr. Hargrove examined Margaret in her flat, he found her vitals normal, but noted several anomalies in his medical journal. Patient presents with unusual flexibility in joints, particularly fingers and spine. Reflexes heightened to abnormal degree. When I tested her pupils' light response, they contracted vertically for a brief moment, cat-like, before resuming normal dilation. Patient became agitated when I noted this, insisted I was mistaken. Most disturbing, patient's cat observed entire examination from doorway, and when I turned to shoo it away, Miss Ashworth gasped as if I'd struck her. He prescribed bed rest and a mild sedative. As he left, he heard Margaret talking behind the closed door. "No, not yet. I'm not ready. You can't." And then that other voice, higher pitched, speaking in perfect mimicry of her words. Not ready, can't." Dr. Hargrove wrote in his personal notes that evening, "I'm a man of science, but I cannot explain the dread that flat inspired. Something is very wrong with Miss Ashworth, though whether it is madness or something else, I dare not speculate." October 12, 1935. A young constable, Robert Davies, responded to a noise complaint at 47 Henrietta Street. Multiple tenants reported sounds of furniture breaking and what one described as animals screaming but forming words. When Constable Davies knocked, Margaret answered immediately as if she'd been waiting by the door. She looked terrible. Her hair had gone partially gray, something Davies swore hadn't been true the previous month when he'd walked this beat. Her skin had a strange quality, as if it were somehow loose on her bones, and her movements were fluid, almost boneless. "Everything is fine, officer," she said in that flat, affectless voice. "I dropped some books, clumsy of me." Davies could see into the flat behind her. Solomon sat in the center of the room, and around the cat were arranged Margaret's possessions in a perfect circle. Photographs, clothing, jewelry, personal papers, like a shrine, or like a spell. "Miss Ashworth, are you quite well?" Davies asked. "You look unwell." "I'm perfectly fine," she replied, but her hand on the doorframe was trembling violently. "Though I do feel I'm not quite myself these days." Behind her the cat's tail swished once, deliberate and slow, and Margaret's hand stopped trembling. Davies included in his report. Subject appeared coherent but distressed. Recommend follow-up from social services. But social services in 1935 Whitechapel were overwhelmed and understaffed. No one followed up. No one checked on Margaret Ashworth again until October 31st. October 28, 1935. This incident was only discovered later, documented in the diary of Margaret's younger sister Dorothy Ashworth Pemberton, who lived in Surrey. Dorothy had received a letter from Margaret dated October 28th. The letter was written in Margaret's handwriting, but Dorothy told investigators it was all wrong. The handwriting was too perfect, too precise, as if someone had carefully copied Margaret's style. The letter read, "Dearest Dorothy, I write to tell you that I am very well and you mustn't worry. I have made a new friend who understands me completely. We are becoming very close, so close that sometimes I cannot tell where I end and it begins. It watches me with such intelligence, Dorothy, such understanding. Sometimes I think it knows me better than I know myself. I had the strangest dream last night. I dreamed I was walking on all fours through the flat, seeing everything from a different height, and my body was in bed, breathing but empty. When I woke, my hands ached, and I found scratches on the inside of my thighs as if I'd been climbing. This Sunday I shall take my friend out to see the world through human eyes for the first time. Do not visit. I mean this kindly, but do not come. Your loving sister, Margaret." Dorothy showed this letter to her husband, who dismissed it as evidence of a nervous disorder. She would spend the rest of her life haunted by her failure to act on her instincts. If this story is giving you chills, hit that like button. It helps us bring you more forgotten tales from the darkest archives. Share this with someone who loves dark mysteries. Now let's discover what happens next. October 31st, 1935. Halloween. A day when the veil between worlds grows thin, or so the old stories claim. Mrs. Coopersmith hadn't heard any movement from the flat above for 3 days. No footsteps, no voices, just an occasional soft thump, like something being dragged across the floor. At 2:47 p.m., she noticed water seeping through her ceiling from Margaret's flat. She summoned Constable Davies, who was again on patrol. Together with the landlord, Mr. Fletcher, they used a master key to enter. The flat was ice cold despite the October afternoon sun streaming through the windows. Every mirror had been covered with black cloth. The furniture had been pushed against the walls, creating an open space in the center of the room.